Alright, so hey guys, so in this video we will go more into detail about turns and rivers for the flops that we looked at in our GTO solver. Uh, Obviously in a text it's much more difficult to write out all the possible turns and outcomes, so it's easier to just make a video. So just to recap, this is 50 antes, UTG, MP limps and button checks, and we get this flop which we analyzed in a solve we have, and in our scenario we entered MP betting and button and UTG calling, and we discussed this card, which is a good bluffing hand, barreling hand. So here we can see again UTG is going to check, and very rarely on these turns are you going to lead out, since you don't have the range advantage and you're out of position. You will have to let the other person do the betting. So here we saw that MP bets quite a lot, so combining his 75% bet and all-ins, he's betting 60%, but as I discussed in the video, since this is a good turn card for us because our opponents are lacking a6 hands, and also they would probably fast play their strong hands, and this is a good betting hand, and as I said, we should be betting at least 60, but probably more like 70, 80 for sure, because it's a good barreling card. That's the recap. But anyways, as I was looking at this spot, I was wondering which other cards would be similar to ace, where MP is supposed to bet a lot, again in a spot where these two guys they see a turn card which doesn't really help them much. So what's interesting here, at first I thought, well, so what's similar to ace of diamonds, hand that doesn't complete with their range, for sure 6 should be a good card, because UTG has only ace-6 of hearts, and you know he doesn't have a sets here, so I thought that would be also a card where we're supposed to bet a lot. It might be similar to ace of diamonds, but when I entered it, I was surprised to see that actually no, we're supposed to check almost everything on a 6, and after a second of wondering, I realized why. It's because button has a lot of 6s in this. So here I wondered, and I wanted to compare, does the button has a lot of 6s only in GTO, or he also has a lot of 6s in real life? So maybe this could go from a mostly check, well, pretty much 100% check, to a more betting spot, because if the button doesn't call as many 6s in real life, we are supposed to be barreling again. So to see that, let's go back to button's calling range. So let's enter our action again. We're betting half pot, and here let's take a look at more in detail about the button's calling range. So let's click on call, and let's see how many 6s he has, and is it accurate compared to real life. So we see that he's supposed to call obviously pocket 6s, but you know, we might actually take away some of them because he's jamming them some amount of time. And 7-6 off and 8-6 off, I mean, here it's a little bit, you know, questionable whether a player would call every single time with 7-6, so we can remove some of those. But for sure, these, I think, I don't think we'll see a player calling with Jack-6, or especially Ace-6 offsuit. Just isn't gonna call in real life. And here, these are all flush draws, so it makes sense. Except again, like Ace-6 of clubs might not be calling in real life. So we can for sure take away some of the 6-6 hands from his range, at least like 50%. And let's see, for him, there's only 8-6 of hearts, but here it's supposed to go all in, and I would say even in real life, Ace-6 of hearts is probably just gonna check jam this flop, because you do have the nut flush, and you might get other two players to fold. So let's go back to our turn spot. So here, because of that, you know, I think it's a good spot to continue barreling, because especially if we assume that our opponent's range is like 10-8, 9-8, you know, the flush draws like queen jack, king jack. I think on the paired board, I think this is a spot where, despite GTO wanting to check, I think it's okay to bet, and also people might overfold their draws because the pair board and the turn is paired, so they might be hesitant to call with like queen jack or king jack. So let's see what happens on other turn cards. So let's take away the six of diamonds. Well, okay, let's see at first what GTO actually bets. We didn't even look at that. So here, GTO only bets 75%, and the only hands he's betting for sure is a full house of pocket nines and straight, which is, you know, interesting. I mean, I would think that GTO might mix in checking because it's a paired board, but apparently he's not so scared, and we're betting ace-6, and for balance, we're still barreling with the ace of hearts and a gut shot and pocket aces, if for some reason you find yourself here with pocket aces. So let's enter some other turn cards. So let's enter a scary turn card. So something like King of Hearts, which completes both straights and flushes, and see what each player is supposed to do. And it's pretty interesting because all players could have flushes or straights. So here, right away, we can see that even though we're still almost checking everything, but we are leading out some hands, which is interesting. And so we're leading out as a UTG pocket kings, and for balance pocket eights, and some other hands, but in a very low frequency. I'm not really, you know, not really sure why we would want to bet with pocket kings, especially so big. But I don't know. Well, I guess it makes sense in GTO's head, and it is pretty funny. Pocket jacks sometimes can just open jam here. And I'm guessing that's with a heart. Yeah, so of course GTO loves his blockers. So if you're blocking the better straight and you're blocking flush, you know, this is like the perfect bluffing hand. And when GTO bluffs, he's bluffing very seriously, and he only jams here. And, you know, obviously it's not maybe the best thing to do in real life, but, you know, to be honest, if you jam pocket jacks here, it's not even so bad, because if someone's, let's say MP is sitting there with 7-8 of spades, I mean, he can't really call. So, and you do have outs, and you do have blockers, and the button is pretty capped also. So honestly, if I get myself in this spot again, and if I can remember this, I would actually jam here pocket jacks with a heart. As crazy as it looks, it, you know, it puts other players in tough positions, and it's not as crazy as it looks, to be honest. But here, what's pretty interesting is that if you look at what GTO is dong betting here, so you have pocket jacks, obviously eights, kings, and a very low frequency of straight. So only 10% of the time. You know, it's interesting to see that GTO is unbalanced because he doesn't have any flushes. He only has one weak straight, which is a queen jack offsuit. So if for some reason you're playing some kind of a GTO bot here and he leads out, you know, it's a good spot to jam here because they can't really call with their leading range. I guess he's calling with kings, but it doesn't, not so great. But anyways, he's mostly checking. So let's see which hands GTO likes to bluff and which hands, or, you know, rather, let's see what we would do if we were sitting here in an awkward position with 7-8 spades, or, you know, offsuit 7-8. Do we still bet and protect our hand, or do we check? So this is his betting range, so 25%, and when he does bet, he only uses the 75% sizing. So we can see that 8-7 of hearts is betting 100% of the time because that's a flush. So let's see what we do with other 7-8s. I'm guessing we're checking. Yeah, so in this spot with the straight, when you have a turn that completes a higher straight and a flush, we can't really protect our hand anymore, and we have to essentially kind of give up in a way. And let's see what we're bluffing with. So an ace of hearts. Yeah, so we're continuing with pocket aces because we do have the ace of hearts, and obviously that's a very strong blocker. And also, so again, you saw that UTG was jamming pocket jacks because it has the best blockers, and here GTO likes to bet. Yeah, also jacks and queens with a heart for the same reason. Well, we can see that it's not only with the heart, so even with two black queens, so we're supposed to bet. You know, again, even without a hard blocker, you know, GTO thinks it's good enough. And, you know, I don't know if I would do it without a heart, but I think if you do have a heart here with jacks or queens, I think you should be betting here. Again, if the button is sitting there with like two pairs or something, it's a very good spot to put pressure on people. And even if they're making some good call downs, you still have equity. So again, you know, we don't have to play as GTO. And sometimes I would look at the spot and be like, well, I don't care what GTO does. I'm not going to do that in real life. But here, I think what we see the pattern with pocket jacks for UTG, and here for our spot, I think these are good semi-bluffing hands for sure. Let's see for fun what also we're supposed to bet. And well, okay, this is wait, just so I'm not wrong. So this is the betting range. Yeah, awful. Thanks. I thought I was maybe looking at the checking range. So here, previously, if I completely agreed with GTO with betting kings and queens, I mean queens and jacks with the heart here, I don't really see much sense with betting with, you know, jack nine. I mean, I do see the sense. I mean, obviously the jack blocker and the queen blocker, as we can see, like, okay, so we don't have to learn specific cards, but we can see the pattern. So he's betting, the GTO is betting this block. And why is he betting this block instead of this? Is, of course, each blocker, jack or queen, is what he's betting. So he's just betting blockers. Having said that, I think, you know, jack nine without heart, it's probably too loose. I think in real life, it really helps more if you have. Anyways, but here, GTO is mostly going to check. So we're going to check and see what button does. You know, do we semi-bluff here, or what's the weakest hand we're betting for protection? And again, we see that since this is such an awkward turn card, it doesn't give anyone range advantage. So usually, as we've seen before, the person with the biggest range advantage or not advantage goes the most crazy. So he's the most aggressive on bets and barrels because he will usually have the best hand. So, but here with the king of hearts, all the players have flushes, all the players have straights. So we're mostly checking here, and that's what we're gonna see in most spots where if you see that it's very close, the EV between all players is very close, then we're gonna see a lot of checking. And here also, so let's go back. So we can see that UTG checks pretty much everything. MP bets 75 and button checks 80%. So again, that's because no one's really sure who has the equity. But let's see what he's supposed to bet here. So in position, interesting. So we are betting, we're betting flushes, of course. And again, we are semi-bluffing. Yeah, so he has this similar strategy as MP. You're betting flushes, and for protection, and you're also betting made straight, which makes sense. You don't really want to check here, even though it's scary out there with the flush possible. You have to bet in position with a flush, with a straight. And here again, you can see the jacks and queens are betting, and that is because of the not straight blockers. And so pretty much the same. So the same jack nine of spades, which is betting 100 for MP. We're also betting jack nine. Let's see what. So yeah, this is kind of odd, you know. I don't think I would bet with 9-6, but everything else makes sense. And here it's kind of easier to learn how to think like GTO thinks. Is, you know, these are very similar to the previous spot for MP. So if you know what MP is supposed to bluff as a button, you also know what to do. So you just have to learn the ranges. I mean, for one person, the blocking ranges, I mean the bluffing ranges, and if you know it for one position, it will help you in a different position. So when you're studying GTO, you have to look for patterns, not just like specific hands, like oh, I have 8-7 off and I'm supposed to bet 60% of the time. You know, that's not gonna help you. You have to, that's too much information for a human brain to handle. So learn these patterns with the blockers. And just for fun, let's see what happens if button does bet here. So let's go with 75, and just for fun, let's see what we're supposed to jam. And once again, UTG loves his pocket jacks. He's even check jamming that, you know, with a heart some amount of time. Even queens, again, he's doing that with blockers. And here, it's a pretty interesting thing that stands out. Like, I think if you were in this spot in real life as UTG, when you check call the flop and you turn a straight with the flush possible, and you're sitting there with the main straight, it's probably pretty awkward. I think it's, you know, you could be drawing that, but there's a good chance you have the best hand. So we can see the GTO jams here. That's definitely a spot where I have thought, you know, what I'm supposed to do here with queen jack. And so let's see if that makes sense in real life. Like, what are we betting? So he's betting flushes and the blocker. So I don't know. It's in any case, you know, if you do remember to jam here, know that at least in GTO it isn't a mistake. But to say if people bet like this in real life, it's pretty hard to say, because they might bet a similar amount. They will bet their flushes. They will bet for protection. So I think overall, it's very hard to, you know, say how much people are going to bet here. But I think if they're betting 20%, I think in real life they will bet a bit more. So in my head, that makes it fine to check jam with queen jack offsuit.